Minecraft. It's the best-selling game of all time and has more clones than I can count. And in this video, we're going to create another one, which will include infinite procedurally generated voxel-based terrain, the ability to place and destroy blocks, and some basic crafting mechanics. To make this more difficult, I've also given myself just 24 hours to make it. So, without further ado, let's start the clock. My first task was the procedural terrain generation. I started off by creating a flat plane of 100 by 100 cubes, and then altered the Y position of each of these cubes using Perlin noise to make it look more terrain-like. However, with this approach, many cube faces were being rendered that couldn't be seen by the player because they were covered by another block. As lag isn't a key feature of Minecraft, I updated the terrain generation script to create blocks in 16 by 16 chunks, and to create a custom mesh that only renders the faces of the cubes that are visible to the player. After writing some simple code to stitch multiple chunks together, I used my limited graphics abilities to create some basic grass, dirt, and stone textures for the game. Because I'm using a mesh to draw the blocks, I needed to use a texture atlas where all of the block textures are located in one file. So, after adding the textures and amending the terrain generation script to spawn the blocks into the game, we have a very basic Minecraft landscape. Next, it was time to work on the player. After slapping together a simple mouse and keyboard movement script and adding it to the capsule, I had the basic player movement sorted. I then built a player model out of cubes and added a Steve skin, before creating an idle and walking animation and linking them together using Unity's animation controller. Moving back onto the terrain generation script, I updated the logic to generate and despawn chunks around the player as they move around the map. After fixing a few bugs in the terrain spawning script, and adding some fog so that the player can't see the chunks spawning around them, the player controller was done. There's one major problem with this world at the moment. It's boring. To solve this, I decided that it was time to add some trees to the game. I updated the terrain generation algorithm to spawn the trunks of the tree on the surface of the world using a random seeded number generator. This meant that each time that the game was loaded, the trees would spawn in the same place and with the same height. I then added some logic to spawn in some leaves onto the trees, and the job was done. With 4 hours gone, it was time to focus on one of Minecraft's core mechanics: terrain modification. To do this, I created a raycast to determine which block the player was looking at, and then created some logic to either add or remove the block into the world and redraw the mesh for that chunk. When playing survival Minecraft, blocks take a few seconds to break. To replicate this, I created a block breaking texture and altered the shader to support transparent textures, which gave me some interesting results. After spending longer than I cared to admit playing with different shaders, I was finally able to get the game rendering properly, with blocks displaying a broken texture as they're being mined. I then created a crosshair and a hotbar to enable the player to select which type of block they want to place, and also so that they could see how many items of each block type are in their inventory. So now, let's add a reason to go mining in the first place. First, I added some new block textures for coal, iron, and diamond ores into the game, and updated the terrain generation script to use a seeded random number generator to spawn the blocks into the world between specified levels. To make some caves, I stole a 3D Perlin noise function and used it to cut out sections of the stone beneath the world's surface. After some fine-tuning of the parameters, and preventing the ore blocks from being spawned away from the walls of the cave, I added a bedrock layer to the bottom of the map. With the last of the terrain generation complete, I decided it was time to start working on some tools to go exploring with. I started off by creating some new textures for wooden, stone, iron and diamond pickaxes and bringing them into the game. I then added these textures to a model and created some simple mining animations so that the pickaxe moves whenever the player is mining. Whilst making the tools, I also updated the block breaking code to change the mining speed and drop type of different blocks when certain tools are used. For example, this meant that I could stop leaves from dropping any blocks when broken, I could change the mining speed of stone for different types of pickaxes, and also require that iron is broken with stone tools or above. After 10 hours since the start of the challenge, I decided to add crafting and smelting to allow the player to make the tools that I'd just been working on. I started out by creating the UI for the 2x2 and 3x3 crafting grids as well as the furnace. Updating the mouse and keyboard control scripts then allowed me to trigger the small crafting menu with the E key, and to activate the crafting table and furnace UIs by right-clicking on the blocks. I then focused on allowing items to be clicked and dragged from the hotbar to the crafting table, and implemented some basic crafting and smelting recipes. So, after just under 12 hours of total dev time, we have Minecraft. Well, the core mechanics at least. In my next video, I'm going to be adding AI to my Minecraft clone. So, if you want to see that, hit the subscribe button and like this video. Whilst you're down there, why not also comment on what game you'd like me to recreate next? Anyway, enjoy this montage of the game and I'll see you in the next video.